Recording. Okay. So maybe we could begin by, if each of you could just introduce yourself, say who you are, where you are, and just a very kind of a thumbnail sketch to start with, just of the work that you're doing. And we'll just begin there. And yeah, that would be a good place to start. So Greg, you've been here the longest, so you get to go first.
So I'm the guy at the back of the church. Is that it? Get there early to get the seat at the back?
Yes. Well, no. You got the seat at the front. I'm sorry.
So my name is Greg Simpson, and I'm a designated lay minister, and I'm serving Calvary United Church in Rodney, Ontario. So Rodney lands about halfway between London and Chatham, just a little bit to the south, not too far off the shores of Lake Erie. So that's the geography out of the way. And the church is acting as a catalyst in a community project that's focused on youth. There's sort of two different angles to it. One of it is running some youth programming, and that consists right now of dances, monthly dances, and then weekly sports nights, which both take place at our local recreation center. Rodney is a town of about 900 people, so we're a fairly small community, surrounded by luscious farmland, so we're very much rural and agricultural. And so that we've got these programs going on for youth, but then the bigger move is we're working to open a youth drop-in center. So connecting with lots of different partners, service groups, and actually service providers in the community, both from like mental health and physical health and those sorts of things, to get some of those services that are available in the larger centers, but not really as available in Rodney, to try and make those connections so that the youth right in our town and in the surrounding farming area are able to connect with some of those services and have a spot to just hang out and be themselves. That's the nutshell.
Great. Thank you. Kelly, if you'd be so kind as to introduce yourself.
Okay, my name is Kelly Shrimpton. I'm with Bethel St. Andrew's United Church in Fitzroy Harbor, which is a tiny village just outside of the city of Ottawa, part of the city of Ottawa. We are a community of about 600 people, and we started last March youth nights at our church. The idea came from a discussion that we had about church is no longer a normal thing for families to do, especially in Ottawa. I don't know about other parts of other areas, but in Ottawa especially, it's very minor hockey, and other sports. Minor hockey, especially out in this area, is the biggest thing to do. And the scheduling for minor hockey in the city of Ottawa does not accommodate people going to church. So we had this big discussion about how it's not common anymore to know very many families that go to church, and that church as a result has been it's not a normal place for kids to go. So that's where the conversation started, and out of that conversation we our wonderful choir director said, let's see what we can do with kids. And we have 3 boys, 3 teenagers, and she said, what do you guys want to do? And we came up with the idea of having youth night, and so we've done 10 now since March. And we have a combination. It runs from 7 to 9:30 once a month. We've increased it to twice a month, and we get 20 to 26 kids out every time. We do about an hour and a half of running around, some kind of energy burning activity, and then we have a lovely projector in our sanctuary, so we're able to run movies. So we have a movie theater, movie night, snacks. So they run around, they get hungry and thirsty, we feed them, and they watch a movie or play games, and it's been really good. We've had, like I said, 20 to 26 is our best number. We've hit that a couple of times. It's not, I think we have a core of about 18 kids that keep coming back, and then we have new friends and different people every time. So we're really happy with that. And we applied we started in March, and then the Embracing the Spirit grant was due April 15th. So we kind of just put some plans together very quickly, and we were fortunate enough to get some funding from Embracing the Spirit, and we were able to hire a youth coordinator who started. She's a 21-year-old recent university graduate who just started with us in September. And so before that, my husband and I were running it with a lot of the local parents. helping out. But now we have a wonderful youth coordinator who's just bringing a lot more. I think it's better. Our kids are in the program and their friends are in the program and they all like us and everything, but it's just much better if it's not a mom running it. It's better to have a younger person running it. So that's what we've been doing in a nutshell.
Cool. Thank you. Deborah, please introduce yourself and provide us a bit of a thumbnail sketch of what you're doing and where you are. That'd be good. Thank you.
Deborah Laforette. I'm a diaconal minister, and I am serving a congregation in Oakville, Ontario, which is very close to Toronto, in a very suburban community, much bigger than the communities you are in. I want to say it's like 200,000, but I'm not sure. So my job is working with the children and youth and adults in a variety of activities, but the program that I'm talking about tonight is our VBS program. Every summer for the past 5 years, a group of churches in our presbytery, anywhere between 6 and 8 churches, have banded together and created a kind of a co-op where we choose a curriculum, kind of work on props together and share props throughout the summer. So there was one church in particular who was making massive props and was very sad to just get rid of them after a week. So they travel week to week and they get used a lot. And we apply for a Canada Summer Jobs Grant, so during the summer, and we hire students who will then travel from church to church to church and help in a variety of ways, in whatever way that particular church needs them. Yes, we've been doing this for 5 years, and just found out recently that we've been doing it wrong through the Canada Summer Jobs Grant.
Doing it wrong what, did you say?
Through the Canada Summer Jobs Grant, they called and I guess we had 6 to 8 churches in the presbytery, and these students are traveling all over Halton region, and found out that they were supposed to be working within one voting constituency. And I was the only, I think of the 8 of us, we were all in like 5 different voting constituencies. So talking with Carla and through this Embracing the Spirit grant, I'm working on connecting with churches within the Oakville constituency now, United churches, Baptist churches, Presbyterian churches, you name it, whatever is in this constituency. They all received an invitation to come and have breakfast with me and hear about a new proposal and try and figure out how we could maybe, as local churches, come together and do this work. And the breakfast is happening tomorrow morning. So I'm kind of waiting to see what happens. We didn't get a big response. I think the ones who responded were the ones most excited. So I think there are 5 or 6 churches maybe being represented tomorrow. So bright and early tomorrow morning, I've got some nervous excitement going. So I have no idea where it's going to go yet. So it's brand new.
Wonderful. And we're right here with you the night before. Very excited. Yeah. Great. Okay. So maybe before I kind of walk in with any questions, I wonder if you have any questions for each other as you're kind of hearing about the stories of one another. Is there anything that comes to mind that you'd like to check out with each other about the work that you're doing? If not, I'll step in. So Greg, I may have asked you this before when we were chatting, but what was the kind of inspiration for this idea of kind of youth programming and the drop-in center? So where did that kind of come from for the members of your congregation as something they wanted to put their energy behind?
Yeah, it grew from a shift that the church was sort of making the move from focusing on themselves and focusing on the standard questions of, so how do we stay alive and how do we exist as a church? I mean, the financial pressures of being a small church in a small community, those sorts of things. And there's been this move to say, well, maybe what we need to do is do a better job of looking outside of ourselves, look to the community and say, what can we do for this community? And sort of be more faithful stewards of the resources that got us to this point and whatever resources we do have. And so that was the starting point, and it turned into a bunch of conversation about going to the community and finding out where are the places that the congregation can reach out, can be a part of the community. And the two major sort of ideas that bubbled to the top had to do with age group. One age group was the elderly, and one age group was youth. And as we looked around, we saw that there already are existing some programs for the elderly. There's still holes, but there are some programs for the elderly in this community. But there are huge gaps for the youth. There's just, I mean, the standard thing is, hey, there's just nothing to do in Rodney if you're a kid. And I see Kelly's nodding her head. It's a small town Ontario thing, is that, and actually just last night at a board meeting, I had a member of the congregation say, yeah, and as soon as they get a car, they're gone, because there's not much in the communities that are keeping kids here. At the same time as the congregation was having that conversation, we connected with a local community health center, which is just sort of in the next community over, about 10 minutes down the road. There's the town of West Lorne, and they're part of our municipality, but they have a large community health center that supports this area. And they've been doing a bunch of index of well-being studies, and they really identified that youth were struggling with a sense of belonging to the communities in this area. And so those two things dovetailed together really, really nicely. And so that's been sort of where it grew out of. So that's one of the first moves, was to say, okay, what's the shortest step to start serving the youth? And that was, okay, well, the community center's right there. By asking really politely, the municipality lets us use the community center for no rent, which is awesome. And so, yeah, I mean, the partnerships are great. It doesn't take a lot of arm twisting, and people are like, yeah, we know that we need to support the youth in the community. We know that this is one of the ways to grow a community and to get people, even if it's not about numbers, grow that belonging, that sense of community. And lots of members of the congregation aren't the youth. In fact, there are very few youth in the congregation, but a lot of these people grew up here and raised kids here, and maybe now have grandkids, and they know what the community used to be like. And they know that one of the reasons that they belonged to a community, and they still have a sense of belonging to the community, is because there was stuff for kids to do when they were growing up. And so the members of the congregation, who might not be the ones who are going to run around chasing the kids these days, but they know what it was like, and they would love to see a bit of that come back. So that's sort of where it grew from. Yeah, that's probably the best catalyst. That's sort of what kind of sparked it.
So I want to step back to something you said at the beginning of your comments, when you talked about how the church moved from, I think you put it, the standard questions of staying alive, which, I mean, it's true, right? It's true, but it's funny that when you'd say it that way, right? So, yep. So I'm curious about what enabled the congregation to move from that place of that fear and that inward focus and that sense of imminent, death, to kind of looking outward and having the energy and the heart to look into the community, into the neighborhood, and have an energy to make a response. What enabled that? How did that happen?
The only place that I can point a finger is the holy mystery of the Holy Spirit. Like, I don't think that I can't say that there was any one catalyst, but being in the position of ministry, it just seemed like every conversation had this little theme to it, and being the catalyst, or being being the conduit for those conversations, I was able to, in even a pastoral care conversation, or meeting some people over coffee, and they'd be saying, well, we're worried about the money, but we're also worried that we're not part of the community, or the community's not showing up. And we know that, they know where we are, and they're not showing up Sunday mornings. And Kelly, we're very much the same. That hockey ice time is cheap on Sunday mornings, and that is definitely part of it. And so there are lots of things that are meaning that people don't show up on Sunday morning. So what can we as a church do to be where they are, or to meet them and meet their needs? So hard to say any one thing other than the work of the Holy Spirit in the congregation and all these little conversations that when you could take a little step back and see that everybody was saying the same thing, which was a really beautiful thing to be part of.
And I don't want to assume or put words or blow your horn for you, but I wonder if was part of the role that you played as your role with listening to all these people, you were able to hear this in different places and then kind of gather it together and share it back to the congregation and say, this is what I'm hearing from you. And then that helped to fuel their energy and their sense of discernment, perhaps, about what they were being called to and what the possibilities were.
Yeah, it was a bit reflective.
Yeah. Exciting. Very exciting. Okay, thank you.
It feels like that.
No, please.
Oh, no, your video had kind of slowed down and I responded before you were done.
Oh, okay.
Sorry.
Yes, the technology is not perfect yet, but hey, we're moving along. So Kelly, what about for you with this kind of, perhaps you could walk us through kind of what was the inspiration for the work that your group was able to start doing? And so you wanted to do the youth programming because you were aware that kids were playing hockey. The hockey thing was happening on Sundays. And so it was a sense of kind of wanting the community to have an easier way to gather and come together, and for the young people to have a gathering space as well.
To be honest, it was probably a bit more selfish than that. Our boys were invited to, we have 3 teenagers, like I said, and they were driving 45 minutes every 2 weeks to a youth group at another town, and they loved it. And I'm really lucky because they're very open to being involved in our church. And when we started going to this church, because we used to go to a church in another community, we started coming to the Fitzroy Church. We were, I think, we were the only family in there. So they weren't teenagers yet. There were no kids. So you can imagine the first day we walked in, everyone was super excited to see us, and it was a little bit overwhelming. But the boys grew up a little bit over the past few years in the church, and they were our congregation is amazing. It's a lot of, again, older people, but so encouraging of anything the boys wanted to do. Do you want to sing? Do you want to light candles? Do you want to do anything? So it kind of evolved there because they started we started getting younger families to come to the church, which is amazing. But they started doing a children's time, and my kids by that time had outgrown it. So they would invite our boys to come to the front, and they did not want to get out of their seats. They were not little kids to go to the front. So they wanted to keep our boys engaged. And we have a very dynamic musical director who just said, what do you want? What can we do for you 3? Because they're the only youth that we had. I mean, we have another youth now, but I think she's 10. So she was just kind of on the edge coming into being old enough to be part of the youth. So I think that what they wanted to do is recognize that we had a new demographic in the church. How do we serve that? And then from my perspective, I love being involved in our boys' life, and if they are willing to do something in our town, or village, then I want to help facilitate that. And it's very much, I think, like Greg was saying, the people who grew up in our congregation used to run around in the streets and do all kinds of. There used to be people in the streets in the village when they grew up here, and there's nobody on the streets now. And so they're very excited about the idea of having kids run through the park and, we have in our small village, we have a wonderful community center with ball diamonds and a volleyball court and an ice rink, and we have a public park, and we have a school, and everybody has just thrown open the doors and said, use what we have. We're the part of the city of Ottawa, and the city of Ottawa does have a youth program, and they did run a youth drop-in for several years, but people didn't come because even though you can bike to the community center, in October and November, it kind of gets dark and they don't want to bike down, and it's not really convenient. Your parents still have to drive you. And we're a commuter city, village to Ottawa. So for a lot of parents, if your kids want to go out and do anything, you have to drive them half an hour, 40 minutes to that, and then you have to find something to do and then go back and pick them up. So this was something that a lot of parents were open to as well, to kind of give their kids something to do on a Friday night, because we do it on Friday evenings, and they don't have to drive for 2 hours or kill time at chapters. I mean, I love killing time at chapters, but so it was the kind of thing that I said, we originally invited our friends and our their friends and people from the local hockey team and the local softball team. And Fitzroy has minor hockey is very big, but we also have a town hockey, and we play against other towns, an outdoor hockey league, and we have a softball league. So our kids had a network of friends from town, and they just kind of spread the word, and everybody just seemed to like, it doesn't matter what we do with these kids. And that's the amazing thing, is we can just say, okay, we're going to play touch football, and it gets dark fast, and it just turns into a game of manhunt or anything. It's just, they just are happy to have something to do. And I think what's really good and exciting about this is that we don't have, like I said, there's now 4 kids in our church over the age of 10. 3 of them are mine, and the other ones are all under 6. There's about 5 or 6 of them, which is great, but we don't have a youth community in our congregation. So we're drawing from the rest of the community. There's 3 churches in our town of 600 people. And I don't think any of them have a lot of families. So we're getting a lot of kids through who don't go to church. But now this is their home base on a Friday night to watch a movie and eat junk food. We don't care, but they're happy with it, and they're starting to take ownership of the building, and they're looking out for, if they invite a friend and the friend is not treating the building with respect, then they're the ones stepping in, which is amazing. They're saying, I don't think we're going to tell that guy that he should come back next time. We'll just let him try to find out on his own, because he wasn't respectful of our space. So it's really nice to see them taking, not that we want to exclude anyone, but they're being more protective of their program, and they want to keep it a nice, happy place to be. So that's very exciting. But a lot of our families don't go to any church at all. So it's kind of neat to have them in our group, in a church every Friday night, and look forward to it, or every second Friday and look forward to it. So.
And what are your kind of thoughts and possibilities for the future, if you were to kind of have the best of all possible worlds as you kind of imagine the future? What would be happening then?
Well, we're kind of moving a little bit towards so a neat thing that's happening right now is our church is putting on a musical in December, and so what we've done is asked the kids in the youth group to start painting the set. It's not the main thing, part of the evening. We still have a game, and we still have a movie, but there are so many kids very artistic, that are just excited about doing the set. So in an indirect way, they're getting involved with our congregation, which is very exciting. But I think there's a lot of potential. I mean, like I said, we have up to 26 people, and it's a lot of word of mouth. I think we're a little bit, well, I know I was reluctant until we got the youth coordinator to just kind of put it right out there, but I think there's a lot of potential to do other things, and to partner with the city, because the city of Ottawa has heard about our programming, and as they've hired a new youth coordinator who has specifically asked to connect with our youth coordinator so that they can work together on things. And that's what I would really like to see, big events, because yes, we want it to be through the church, but the need that we are really serving is giving kids safe and fun social possibilities, so they don't have to leave the community and they don't have to get into trouble. So that's what I would really like to see continue, and if we can do that with City of Ottawa funding, that would be even better.
That's wonderful. Good, thank you. Right. So Deborah, I want to come back to you, and my sense of yours, of kind of what has transpired in your story is that you had evolved this very cool model of the Canada Summer Student Grant as a way to help support the Vacation Bible School programs that you were doing. Is that right? And then you realized that with this kind of the legalities of how that's supposed to run, you've been given this need/opportunity to collaborate closer to home. So now you're on the cusp of discovering what might evolve from that. How is that feeling at the moment for you? What is it? Can you say a little bit more about that?
How is it feeling? A little nerve-wracking right now. I think when we looked online, there were 50 different kind of faith communities in our constituency. So we just kind of put them all into a spreadsheet and sent them all invitations. So we had no idea what to expect, what the response would be. And I admit, I think it's been a little disheartening that we had like 3 full replies. So I think though I have to think there's a lot of these faith communities. Some of them didn't exist. Some of them had dead phone numbers. Some of them, but some of them said, well, we don't have any children and youth, so this doesn't work for us. Or some of them, the pastors just said, I'm way too busy and I can't do this right now. So I think I'm grateful for the 4 people who said, yes, we want to hear about this, and how can we and discuss about how we can work together. Because if we can get 5, that's great, right? We can talk about BBS, but we can also talk about it can become bigger. How can we because I think just like in the smaller towns, we're all struggling with a few youth and a few children. But if we can gather them all together, it just brings that energy and spirit, makes it so much bigger, and the young people get so much more from it.
Mm-hmm. So part of what you're seeing, perhaps the inkling or the possibility of, is kind of a stronger collaboration and synergy amongst neighbor churches, particularly around children and youth. Yeah.
That's my hope.
That's your hope.
I just think there are so many faith communities that kind of live in silos, doing their own thing, when we could be coming together and doing a big thing together.
That's exciting. And what will happen to the other churches that you were partnering with before? What's happened with that part of the story?
Well, there are a couple of churches in Mississauga who are trying their own thing. They want to see if they can do the same thing, find some local churches to come together. One has said they're just going to go on their own, and some of the churches that were a part of this co-op were there because they were struggling and they needed that support. So without that support, it's going to be a lot harder for them. And I'm still talking with them and trying to figure out how I can be supportive. But hiring students for them is not going to be practical anymore unless they try and team up in their own voting constituencies. So it does make it hard.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So now that you've been able to kind of hear a little bit from one another, is there any other pieces that you'd like to ask, or anything that resonates with you that you have heard from the other presenters on the call, and anything that caught your attention in their story and what they were sharing?
Well, I would just like to say my opinion. I think, Deborah, that you should be very proud that you've got the 3 or 4 others, because, you've already broken down, just by getting them to come to the table and have breakfast, you've already broken down some of those silos, and that's already a big accomplishment to have. Even if you had 2, that would be an accomplishment. But, to have that many, I think that's something that you should be proud of. Regardless of what happens after tomorrow, you got 3 or 4 new people at a table. So congratulations on that.
Well,
sounds
thank you.
Very exciting.
And I think it'll be interesting because I think also as a United Church, we're always afraid of what the other people's theology is going to be, or how are they going to indoctrinate our youth and children. but it'll be interesting to just keep an open mind and see how we can work together with our different theologies and our different ways of doing things.
Yeah, so there's...
Well, I have to say, Deborah, that
Go ahead.
I have to say that my mind is really churning now, because we do a vacation Bible school as well. And this past year we got a grant through, I can't remember which part of the United Church, but we got a grant to pay part of a student's salary to help out with that, which was great. But we in rural areas have huge voting constituencies. And I'm thinking, oh my goodness, what other United churches land within mine? Like the number of United churches that would be struggling and maybe don't have a VBS or also have those same questions. I hadn't even looked at Canada Works for that. So I'm kind of doing a mental list in my Rolodex of, okay, I'll call her, and she's probably, I don't know if I can convince him, but this is just an awesome idea. I love that you guys had that success. And I love the idea of each of those churches bringing their own skill set. So you've got one church who wants to build big set pieces. That's awesome. And maybe somebody else has beautiful musicians or who knows what. I love that sharing. So with your permission, I'd love to steal the idea.
Definitely. And the youth that get hired, it's a great opportunity for them. And they're working with children, they're working with other volunteers, they're working with supervisors in different environments. It's a great learning opportunity for them and great on a resume.
I bet.
That's wonderful. Cool. Okay. Well, probably at this point, unless you have other questions, as I was saying to Greg and Kelly at the beginning, that we would kind of talk until it felt like we kind of reached an end space because we don't have any other guests and participants. But maybe just by way of closing, I'd invite each of you just to kind of say what you're taking away from the call today and what's kind of stood out for you from our conversation together. So I guess maybe I'll start, and I guess what I would say is, as a theme that I heard in each of the stories that you shared, is your willingness, the willingness of yourself and your kind of colleagues or friends or other members of your congregation to step outside of your comfort zone, right? So to kind of step into a new unknown space and to let that inform you. And so I certainly heard that as a theme, and that you got there either by listening or by the government telling you you had to, which is interesting, right? We're kind of called and nudged in different ways. You could never quite know where it's going to come from. But I heard the courage and the willingness to step into that unknown space and see what happens next. So that's a theme that I heard and something I'll take away from this call. So I invite, if there's other things you'd like to share as by way of checking out on kind of what's standing out for you. Hello, dog.
Sorry.
That's fine. All good.
Well, I think I would build on what you were saying, Sarah, and what I see here and what I'm noticing in our context, as well as what Kelly and Deborah both said, is recognizing that to connect with youth, we might have to be willing to step outside of Sunday morning. There are lots of different reasons for that. I mean, it seems Kelly and I have very similar reasons, hockey ice time being a big one, and lots of other intramural or extracurricular things that Sunday morning seems to be. Either Saturdays are so busy that with all the other events, that Sunday mornings are the only time that our families can be families, that they can sleep in and have breakfast together and that sort of thing. And so I think for some members of our congregations, and I don't want to pick any age demographic, but some people still feel like Sunday morning is the only time to do church, or it's sort of the flagship of what church is. And I hear real hope in all three of these stories, that by being willing to look to other times during the week, the kids are there, the youth are there, they would like to be involved in church one way or another. And like you were saying, Kelly, is you've got all these families who might never have any relationship with your congregation, with your church building, and who knows what theology may or may not come from that. But now at least they have a relationship with church, and I think that's a beautiful thing. And so, in our research, we've been doing a lot of looking at other youth centers, that some that are and some that are not connected with churches, and that seems to be a really common theme, is that we've got to be willing to step away from 10:30 to 11:30 on Sunday mornings as being the only time that we're allowed to talk to kids.
Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Thank you. Kelly, any kind of parting thoughts or things you'll take away from this call?
Well, I was really interested to hear that, Greg, that your focus is on some of the other parts of youth that we're not addressing. So obviously we're trying to address social and community and normalizing church as a place to go in your community, as a safe space in your community. In fact, for the first time, I think ever, they opened up the church and gave out candy at Halloween, and they'd never done that before. And I think they got 30 or 40 kids through, which is amazing, because
Nice.
In Fitzroy, I had 12 people at my house, so 2 blocks over, so that the fact that they got 30 was great. But to look at, we haven't done that in our church, and I think it's a really important thing in our community as well, as we don't have anything out here that is addressing, mental health and, any of those issues, like any of the issues that we know teens are struggling with. We don't have anything in place for that. So I think that's definitely something to consider, because that is a need that reaches beyond the church, regardless of what your faith is. That is a need, and that is a way that we could serve our youth better. I think that's a really, really good point, and something that I'm going to digest over the next little while and see what we can do about that. And I really like Deborah's idea. Our boys they volunteer before church. So we have the Camp Awesome, but they do the pre and post care. I don't know, and they have done that for the past couple of years. And again, some kids who don't do anything. My best friend is not affiliated with any church, and she will never be. And so her daughters have no idea what even the inside of a church looks like, except that through our youth group and through the camp. I think the camp is an excellent way to engage kids in volunteer hours, which they need to graduate, but also as a summer job. And I love the idea of having them become specialized. That's a really good skill, to coordinate a group and to come up with activities and to think on the fly. And there's a lot of really good skills from that it can be transferable to anything they're doing later. And I had, again, that's not something that I'm involved in other than making sure my kids get there on time, but that's a really fantastic idea. And I'm excited that, again, from an employment opportunity, that's a really exciting idea. So I think it's been really great to talk about different approaches, because it gives me an idea of what more we could be doing. There's a lot that we could be doing. So it's about, choosing what is the next logical piece for us.
Wonderful. Thank you. And Deborah, for you, anything that's going to stand out that you'll take away from this call today?
I think it's interesting to hear how different communities are trying to find safe spaces for our young people. That having that space where they can come and feel loved and valued, and but it also, I think, opens up opportunities to connect those young people with older people. I think so many times the older people in the congregation have no idea who the young people are, don't know their names, and vice versa. So I think these opportunities also strengthen those bonds, strengthen the relationships between the ages, and that's always my goal, because I think the young people can learn so much from their elders, and the elders can learn so much from our children. So all of creating these places, creating these programs will do that naturally. So I think that's good.
Great. Well, thank you very much, each of you. I really enjoyed spending this time with you. And so thanks so much for coming and sharing your story. And it's been a real pleasure. So we'll be sharing this video on the Edge website, on their YouTube channel, for other people who are kind of are exploring and discerning in this area. So thank you so much, and take care, and hopefully we'll see you again soon at some point. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.